Welcome to Body Moves for Life. Again, this is John Archer, your host, looking to do a little bit of hip movement tonight. I wanted to just introduce you to some basic concepts to really loosen up your hips. Some things you may have done before, some things you may have not. So first of all, many times when we think of our hips, we think of basic hip rolls, so we start rolling our hips and we kind of get this movement going here. Now, a lot of things going on there. The tendency is to roll the whole body, which could be good if it's intentional. But actually I want to isolate first without getting the upper body involved. And so when we talk a little bit about isolation, we basically try to not move the upper part of the body while the lower part moves. So looking at the isolation concept, if I leave my upper body here, I can move to the side, forward, and back. Or if I leave my hips here, I can move to the side, forward, and back. So technically, we basically could have the shoulders going this way and the hips going this way, like this, and then hips going back and shoulders going forward like this, and reverse like this. And that could be an intentional move. I would like to encourage us to learn to isolate those movements, first of all, by perhaps focusing on the hips and leaving the shoulders where we are. So as I work on this circle here, I leave the shoulders very still and I work on a very full circle, trying to extend as far as I can in the circle without moving the shoulders. I'm going to go the other direction as well. And this is maybe a very common exercise one might do for the hips, to warm up the hips. Okay. Now, however, we can exaggerate by putting the upper body into the movement with making kind of circles at the top and circles at the bottom, which gives a more exaggerated feel. And if that's intentional, that's good. And I would say it's good to learn to do it both ways. Now, what's interesting about that is technically you could make the upper body have very large circles, which would be more like this. Well, I guess I might call this medium large. I'm going to go here. Okay, and then when I think of very large, I might think of going kind of like all the way down, and then as far to the side as I can, and all the way back as far as to the side as I can, and slowly all the way down here. So to the side till the hip comes forward, then back to the side, as far down as I can go, and back up. Now, what we can do is we can work on some different combinations of those, or different focuses, if you will. Foci. I think that's the word. Moving the hips here and the shoulders here, or the hips and the shoulders. But I also like incorporating the arms as well. And what that may look like is something like this. So I'm going to bring this arm over and lean to the side, then lean it back and down, this arm up, over, and around. Okay, so it looks like this. And those are like the medium circles. If we want to go really big, you can go down really far, back as far as possible, down really far, and across and back around the other way. Now, the thing about it is, it's easy to cheat when you get to the side. So look, as I'm going here, going around. Now, when I get to the side here, it's easy to start to the side and then come around to the front. But the more correct stretch would be to the side, staying to the side until you get as far as you can go, and then move across. gives you a much better stretch. Now, one thing I wanted to kind of introduce is another way to work the hips by isolating each hip. And so normally or often when we do these circles, we'll go around like this, okay? But you can also kind of isolate one hip by putting all the weight on one hip and do the circle just on that hip, okay? And then the other direction. Now I'm going to move to the other hip, one direction, and then the other direction. Okay. Now, one thing that's kind of fun to do is while I'm doing circles on this hip, I'm going to shift and keep going in the same direction and circles on this hip. Other direction on this same hip, and then move over to the other hip. And then, of course, we can do circle the figure 8 circles. So I'm going to go forward here, and backwards here, and forward here, and backwards here, and reverse, backwards here, and forward, and backwards, and forward, and backwards. This actually took me a while to figure out how to do. I had a friend of mine to teach me how to do that, and I had to really practice on the coordination, but it helped. It helped to loosen up my hips. It helped to develop my coordination. And then this whole thing with the arms moving around the head helped me develop some coordination, and just to get my whole upper body kind of pivoting or spindling around the hips to really loosen my hips. I wanted to throw out some ideas there, some thoughts on some different things you may do to loosen hips. You can simply do these little side stretches as well, or simply fold over and back. And those are good warm-ups too. I find the other ones a bit more dynamic, a bit more interesting, and especially the ones that pertain to coordination. I find them to be they help take the boredom out of just a boring circle or folding motion that you may do every day and not think it's very exciting. Hip movements, very important. A lot of people as they get older get hip replacements. Don't really work their hips very much. Not a very hard stretch to do, just some basic circles at least, you know, in the mornings or at night before you go to bed. Working a little bit on these figure 8s is kind of fun, creative, and working on these isolated circles on each hip is something that I don't see many people do either. I hope you enjoyed this video. Very fun and different on some of those hip circles and rotations. Please join again tomorrow as we do another exciting video. Please feel free to subscribe and click the like. Would love to see you again. Thanks for joining. Good night.